Alright everyone, prepare for some goofy riots because the cops in the Jacob Blake case predictably have not been charged. They've decided not to charge them with any crime. That's because it was a straightforward case where the cops weren't acting outside of the law. They did what any reasonable person would do, which was effectively defending themselves against a person with a deadly weapon at the time. I'll get into a little bit about the case and also how you can actually reform the police. First and foremost, though, I am abused by YouTube now, and they openly brag about abusing all independent creators who do news content because they put MSM sources ahead of you in the queue for most purposes. Keeping in mind that if you've been subscribed, or by random chance, you might see my material anyway, because Google now tailors everything individually. You can therefore share this video out from YouTube if you'd like on another platform to make it more searchable. I appreciate it when people do that. Conversely, if you want to abandon the algorithmic manipulation bullshit, there's a pinned comment on YouTube and also links in the description to other sites where I upload the same videos I upload on YouTube. I also do exclusive content solely at this point on BitChute, approaching 118,000 subscribers there. Quite something. That being said, we'll get right into it. Jacob Blake was a criminal. And when I call someone a criminal, as a libertarian, that doesn't mean, well, they smoked weed. They jaywalked or something. I mean a significant criminal. We're talking a felon. Jacob Blake attacked officers with a knife. He was tased. The tasing didn't work. He attempted to go for... Actually, initially I think he was going for a knife, and they tased him after he was starting a physical altercation with his fist. Then he goes for a deadly weapon, and they shot him. He was wanted at the time, and not for a non-crime. Again, we're not talking about, well, he dealt a little crack. I don't care if he deals a little crack. I don't give a fuck. I don't care if he had an illegal moonshine still in his basement. I don't care if he stole a loaf of bread. He was wanted for sex assault, and had quite a rap sheet of significant crimes. Again, we're not talking minor things. We're talking major felonies with a clearly defined victim, violent crimes. He was wanted at the time. He got into an altercation with other people. The police were called. The police came and attempted to arrest him because he had an outstanding warrant for an actual significant crime. He attacked them. I'm very, very pleased that in this case, justice was served. I was afraid that they would bring bullshit charges against the officers just because they're afraid of rioters. And we've seen this time and time again, where people are charged with crimes when it is clear, when it is self-evidently obvious in every possible, objective, observable way that the person did nothing wrong. This has happened time and time again. It is usually racially based. But it's not because the family goes nuts. It's not because people within the community get mad. It's because the MSM takes up the story and says, you know what, instead of reporting the news, we're going to make the news. Let's make people riot. And so you've had riots all over the fucking country at this point now, going on for almost an entire year over Fentanyl Floyd and Jacob Blake and other people like this. And in virtually all of these cases, the people that everyone's getting mad about and burning their own Wendy's to the ground about are the ones that were justifiably killed. Or in some cases, like with George Floyd, they weren't even killed. They died of a massive overdose and people decided the cops were responsible just for physically being there, even though the dude was showing signs of cardiac troubles beforehand, clearly on tape. We've got recordings of these incidents. Note that none of the times that someone is actually unjustifiably shot or killed or run over by a cop, in those cases people don't riot. Do you remember the Chris Dorner episode in LA many years ago? Can't corner the Dorner. You remember he was a former Navy SEAL. Yeah, he got disgruntled at the LAPD because of corruption. He was one of them. And so he went cop killing. The cops in LA shot up several vehicles. They paralyzed one person. They destroyed property. They harassed people. They went nuts. Nobody ever rioted because of that. There was never a case where anyone held a sign for these people. They didn't complain about police brutality. It wasn't talked about by the MSM. They were too busy talking about Dorner at the time. But thereafter, the LAPD had filled several pickups that weren't even the right color full of holes. Again, paralyzing a person in the process, causing, catastrophic injuries to that person, causing untold emotional stress to these people. They're like, what the fuck? Now, the cops just filled my pickup with lead. They go speeding up. They don't even know what the fuck's happening. How do they even know necessarily it's the cops shooting at them? They're too busy fleeing. Nobody ever had a problem with it. No problem whatsoever. You never heard another mumbling fucking word about it. Jacob Blake, meanwhile, attacks the cops, tries to achieve a deadly weapon, presumably to kill them. I wonder why he would want to have a knife on him. He wasn't trying to flee. He gets shot and everyone all of a sudden goes crazy and burns Wendy's to the ground. And that's the other thing. This twofold facet of these cases is why you're never going to have police reform in the United States under the current situation. Number one, they always fixate on cases where the shooting was justified, or at least potentially justifiable. They don't focus on the ones that, in many cases, don't even involve a black male, by the way, in which there was obvious unjustifiable activity. I remember there was a case years ago where they tossed a flashbang into a house and it landed in a toddler's crib, scarred him for life. Nobody ever said, oh, police brutality, we need to burn Wendy's. And that's the other part. People start burning their own communities, making the cops, by virtue of that, look good. When the cops, whether it's a justifiable shooting or not, are getting compared to a pack of violent goofballs who think that justice comes by torching gas stations and doing crazy things and assaulting random people and marching through the suburbs shouting at people that they want to come beat their kids up and shit. The fuck? Nobody's going to listen to you. It's like when the left, they claim, we're going to tackle this police brutality stuff. We're going to defund the police. Nobody wants that. No reasonable, sane individual wants that. I've got a suggestion, though, that will work, and this is why DC will never actually take up the suggestion. We need to look at the entire legal code on the federal and state level. We need to go through the entire goddamn thing and create 3 basic categories of code. Number 1, and this is a very large proportion of all the things you can get arrested for, non-crimes. No clearly defined victim. Public intoxication. Jaywalking. Fucking, is in jaywalking, there's nobody else driving down the road. You get fined for it anyway. Drug possession. Public urination, practically. Things that don't have really a victim. Things that other people might consider it annoying or degenerate, but really they should just mind their own goddamn fucking business and society would be a lot better. If you were to take all the people out of jail and restore the fines and so forth and get rid of the rap sheets for people that fell under this category, it'd be a double-digit proportion of all the so-called criminals in the country. They shouldn't have a rap sheet. Public intoxication, who cares? Unless they're disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. Things like that shouldn't be considered crimes. Certainly nothing related to drugs. You collected rainwater during a drought. Who cares? It's not victimizing anyone. No victim, no crime. Second category, and this is the bulk of all legislation, this is probably like 80% of everything, crimes that are not significant. Crimes that should have to be crimes, petty larceny. You stole something, you stole a toaster or something. Shoplifting, harassment or something in the non-aggravated sense, of course. Things that have basic property damage. Okay, you broke someone's window. Maybe it was an accident, maybe you pissed at your neighbor or something. You made a threat to somebody online. These are crimes, but they're not, you don't need to go to prison for them. The problem is we've had politicians, ironically like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who now claim to do a 180, who have put people in prison for extended sentences for this sort of crime under like 3 strikes laws. Yeah, all you did was smoke a little weed, but you've gotten caught doing that twice before, so we're putting you in a penitentiary for 10 years to be a slave making license plates. That's really helpful for society. No, those crimes should carry no jail time whatsoever. If you need to pull them into jail for a day or two to book them or something, have a trial, that's one thing. There shouldn't be a bail requirement, or at least a significant one, set at $10. Fucking offset, the court clerk's hourly wage. Restitution. Public service. They're forced to go in and, they did graffiti, they did vandalism. You make them clean the vandalism off. Make them sit there in the sun and scrub their graffiti off. Problem solved. Maybe they learn their lesson. The idea that, we need to really, really pound people for lesser crimes, otherwise they'll become bigger criminals, that's exactly wrong, and we've observed that now for decades under these tough on crime components that we've used. What ends up happening is you take Harold the Happy Hippie and put them in the penitentiary, and they meet Manny the murderer, and then they learn how to make a shiv. That's how you make hardened criminals. You put them in prison for undeserving reasons. Then you have the very small proportion of crimes that are both legitimate, there's a victim, a clearly defined one, and they're significant. Significant property damage, a grand larceny, grand theft auto, mass murder, rape, child molestation, human trafficking, things like that are menaces to society. For those people, you should put them in jail longer. Half the time, these people get lesser sentences. So somebody fucking assaults someone with a machete, and then they're not in jail as long as someone who, under a 3 strikes law, just had some crack. That's why we have problems. Separate crime into these three categories. No more late night raids by the cops because someone smelled weed. No raiding someone's home because, their party was too loud. It's goddamn stupid. That's why people don't trust the police. These communities are ill-served by the police, but it's not the cops' fault. It's the fault of the politicians and the legal code. And secondary to that, the MSM, that every time something like this happens, they say, well, it's systemic racism. Nothing's being done. The cops are shooting everyone. Don't you think that kind of heated rhetoric causes people to be a little bit antagonized? Especially during lockdowns, by the way, I will submit. Now, it's supposed to go into large gatherings, but de Blasio and all these others say as long as you have a black power fist, it's okay. This is the problem. So I'm glad that these cops weren't charged. I can see the footage of them killing Jacob Blake. He was attacking them. He physically assaulted them. He attempted to retrieve a deadly weapon, and he's a felon, a violent felon, with a violent felony warrant out for his arrest at the time after having an altercation with other people. He was probably intoxicated, although I haven't seen any toxicology write-up. Usually that's a lie by omission by the MSM, by the way. What more can you do? If someone assaults you and is going for a deadly weapon, I'd kill him too. What choice do you have? At that point, they are a threat to your life, not just to you. What if he had killed these cops, slices them up, and then he goes completely ballistic and kills a bunch of kids or something? He might be tweaking at the time. The taser didn't work. Usually when the taser doesn't work, there's a pharmacological reason for that. I saw one time, there was this dude who was ranting about the power of Jehovah. He was clearly having a psychotic break or something. They were tasing him, and he was like, doing his power roars. He runs off, he got away. It was great. In that case, he was just a harmless lunatic, I think, and they probably shouldn't have even fucking harassed him. You do have problems with police brutality, but as long as you boil it down to more racism, number one, because it happens disproportionately to other groups of people, not just young black males, the stereotype, number one, and number two, your suggestion for solving the problem lies squarely in wanting to defund the police that have to defend these communities. That's the exact wrong way to go about it. Reform the legal code, stop fixating solely on race, and look at it as a broader problem that's largely created by an overburdened, shitty legal code. That's the problem. It's the politicians' fault. It's the media's fault. It's not Joe Schmo, the beat cop's fault. It's not the community's fault. In this case, it's just Jacob Blake's fault. But Jacob Blake gets killed, and then all of a sudden everyone goes crazy, and now you've got, billions of dollars of property damage as a result of it. Wonderful. You got justice and peace now because you burned Wendy's to the ground. Wonderful. These people aren't playing with a full deck. That's about all. Peace out.